Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was Naruto reincarnation. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The waiting room of the Muzidafu General Hospital smelled of antiseptic, floor wax, and the subtle, metallic tang of suppressed anxiety. It was a smell that belonged to bad news, though 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya was too young to categorize it as such. To him, the air simply smelled like waiting. He sat on the edge of the plastic orange chair, his legs swinging back and forth, unable to touch the linoleum. In his hands, a limited edition All Might action figure, the Silver Age variant with the articulated cape, was currently engaged in a fierce battle against an imaginary villain named the Sludge Man. Izuku, sweetie, stop fidgeting, Inko Midoriya said gently, placing a hand on his knee. She looked tired. Her eyes, a soft and anxious green, darted toward the heavy oak door of Dr. Garaki's office every time it creaked. The doctor will call us soon. I can't help it, Mom. Izuku beamed, the action figure raised high. When I get my quirk, I'm gonna be just like him. I'm gonna save everyone with a smile. Maybe I'll breathe fire like Dad, or float things like you. Or maybe I'll have super strength. Inko smiled, but the expression didn't quite reach her eyes. Most children manifested their quirks by age 4. Izuku's 4th birthday had come and gone 3 months ago. The kindergarten teachers had started to look at him with a mixture of pity and concern. The bullying from Katsuki, Kaken, had already begun, small explosions accompanying the word Deku. The heavy door creaked open. A nurse with a clipboard stepped out, looking bored. Midoriya? The doctor will see you now. Izuku hopped off the chair, his red sneakers squeaking against the floor. He marched forward, chest puffed out, marching toward his destiny. He had no idea that destiny was not something given, but something remembered. Dr. Kyudai Garaki was a man who looked like he had been carved out of a toadstool and left to dry in the sun. His mustache was thick and bushy, his goggles opaque, reflecting the fluorescent lights of the office. He sat in a swivel chair that seemed too large for him, studying a set of X-rays clipped to a light board. The silence in the room was heavy. Izuku's excitement began to curdle into a cold lump in his stomach. He clutched All Might tighter. You should probably give up, the doctor said. The words were dropped into the room like stones into a pond. No splash. Just a heavy, sinking feeling. Inko gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Doctor, what do you mean? Is something wrong with him? Garaki sighed, tapping the X-ray with a pen. Mrs. Midoriya, look here. This is an X-ray of your son's foot. Do you see the pinky toe? Yes? It's a relic of evolution. People with quirks have evolved past it. They have a single joint there. A streamline form for a new age. Your son, however, he has 2 joints. It's rare these days, remarkably so. But it confirms what the lack of manifestation suggested. The doctor swiveled around, folding his hands over his stomach. Izuku is quirkless. He has no genetic markers for power. He is, for all intents and purposes, a normal, powerless human. The world stopped. For Izuku, the sound of the air conditioning became a roar. The color drained from the room, leaving everything in shades of gray. The All Might figure slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto the floor. Quirkless, useless, defective. The words weren't spoken, but they hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Izuku looked down at his hands. They were small, weak, empty. He tried to draw a breath, but his chest felt constricted, as if a heavy stone had been placed upon his heart. Oh, Izuku. Inko's voice was breaking. She reached for him, tears already streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. She hugged him, burying his face in her shirt. She was apologizing. Why was she apologizing? Because he was broken? Because she had failed to make him right? Izuku wanted to cry. He wanted to scream. The despair was a physical thing, a cold claw gripping his insides. But then, something snapped. It wasn't a mental break. It was a spiritual realignment. Deep inside the core of Izuku's soul, beneath the layers of childhood innocence and the trauma of the moment, a dormant ember flared. The sheer emotional shock of the diagnosis, The devastation of a dream shattered, acted as a key, turning a lock that had been rusted shut for generations. A pulse of heat, hot and ancient, surged from his stomach. It rushed up his spine, scorching his nerves. Thump. His heart beat once, loud enough to echo in his ears like a war drum. Thump. The room spun. The gray world turned a violent, vibrant orange. Izuku? Inko pulled back, sensing the heat radiating from her son. Izuku, you're burning up. Izuku's eyes rolled back into his head. The fluorescent lights of the doctor's office dissolved into darkness. He didn't hear Dr. Garaki's surprised grunt, or his mother's terrified scream. He was falling, tumbling backward through the floor, through the earth, falling deeper than any physical hole could go. He fell into the basement of his own soul. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of water echoing in a vast, hollow space. Izuku blinked. He was lying on his back. The surface beneath him was cold and wet. He wasn't in the doctor's office anymore. He wasn't wearing his favorite All Might t-shirt. He was wearing nothing. No, his spirit felt clothed, but the details were fuzzy. He sat up, rubbing his head. The air here was damp and smelled of old iron, rust, and something muskier, like wet fur. It was dimly lit, the light source indeterminate, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Mom? Izuku called out. His voice echoed, bouncing off the walls. Doctor? He stood up. He was in a corridor. A massive, stone corridor flooded with ankle-deep water. Pipes lined the ceiling, twisting and turning like metallic snakes. This place is scary, Izuku thought, trembling. Am I dead? Did the shock kill me? But despite the fear, there was a strange familiarity. The water lapping at his ankles didn't feel cold, it felt welcoming. It pulsed with a faint rhythm, matched to his own heartbeat. He began to walk. Instinct guided him. There was a pull, a magnetic tug in his gut drawing him deeper into the labyrinth. He splashed through the water, turning corners, passing endless rows of pipes and valves. Finally, the corridor opened up into a cavernous chamber. It was immense. The ceiling was lost in the gloom above. And in the center of the room, dominating the space, was a gate. It was a cage of golden bars, rising hundreds of feet into the air. In the center of the lock was a seal, a spiral of paper that looked ancient and weathered. Izuku stood before the gate, feeling like an ant before a mountain. He should have been terrified. Any 4-year-old would be. But Izuku didn't run. He walked up to the bars and placed a small hand on the cold metal. Hello? He whispered. From the darkness behind the bars, 2 eyes snapped open. They were red. Slitted. Glowing with a malevolence that felt less like evil and more like a force of nature. A hurricane given consciousness. So, a voice rumbled. It was deep, scraping against the stone walls like a landslide. The seal has finally weakened enough for you to wander in. I was wondering how long it would take. Izuku gasped and stumbled back, splashing into the water. A massive shape shifted in the shadows. A snout, covered in orange fur, moved into the dim light. Teeth the size of broadswords glistened. It was a fox. A fox the size of a building, but as the creature moved closer, the form shimmered. The massive size seemed to compress, the chakra condensing. The giant fox shrank, folding in on itself until it was roughly the size of a large horse, still intimidating, but no longer a titan. It had 9 long, swaying tails that curled behind it like a fan. The fox lowered its head, bringing its massive eye level with Izuku. You're small, the fox observed, sounding disappointed. And you look weak. Pathetic, really? No chakra coils developed. No physical conditioning. You look like a gust of wind would knock you over. I'm Izuku, the boy stammered, tears pricking his eyes. I'm 4. Izuku, the fox tasted the name, spitting it out like something sour. A boring name. It lacks flavor. The fox sighed, a sound that sent a hot gust of wind through the bars, blowing Izuku's hair back. The creature laid its head on its front paws, looking bored. Do you know who I am, brat? Izuku shook his head vigorously. A villain? The fox let out a bark of laughter that shook the water. A villain? Ha! I have been called a demon, a disaster, and a monster. But never a simple villain. I am Kurama. The nine-tailed fox. The name struck a chord in Izuku's mind. Not in his brain, but in his blood. Kurama. It felt like a warm blanket. It felt like the smell of ramen broth. It felt like loneliness, and then, friendship. Kurama, Izuku repeated. The fox's eyes narrowed. You don't remember, do you? The cycle of reincarnation is a messy business. It scrubs the slate clean. Mostly. Kurama shifted, one of his tails twitching. Listen well, Kit. Because I'm tired and I want to go back to sleep. This world, it's different. The chakra in the air is thin, diluted by these quirks you humans have developed. But you, Kurama extended a claw, poking it through the bars. He gently tapped Izuku's forehead. You are the vessel of the seventh. You are the echo of Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto. The moment the name was spoken, the headache split Izuku's skull. Images flashed before his eyes, rapid fire and blinding. A boy in an orange jumpsuit painting stone faces. A swing set moving in the wind, empty. A bowl of noodles offered by an old man. A hand summoning a swirling ball of blue energy. Pain. So much pain. Being hated. Being alone. And then, standing up. Getting back up. Fighting. A headband with a leaf symbol. A man with silver hair covering one eye. A boy with dark hair and eyes full of vengeance. A war. A tree. The moon. A hand raised in victory. A cloak with flames at the bottom. The title, Hokage. Izuku screamed as the memories, not facts, but emotions, flooded his tiny 4-year-old brain. He didn't learn history. He learned nature. He didn't learn jutsu. He learned intent. He remembered what it felt like to be absolutely alone. And he remembered what it felt like to decide that being alone wasn't an excuse to give up. The images faded, leaving Izuku gasping for air on the wet floor of the mindscape. He felt different. Older. He was still Izuku Midoriya, the boy who loved All Might, but the foundation of his house had been swapped out. Where there was once fragile glass, there was now reinforced steel. The memories will remain fragmented, Kurama said, his voice softer now. You are not Naruto. Naruto is dead. He lived a good life, and he died an old man. You are his echo. But his soul, his will of fire, it is woven into your DNA. Kurama yawned, exposing a gullet of terrifying teeth. You were diagnosed quirkless today, weren't you? Izuku looked up, his eyes wiping away a tear. But the tear didn't fall. Yes. Good, Kurama grunted. Quirks are crutches. Cheap genetic mutations. You have something better. You have chakra. Or you will, once you unclog those pathetic coils of yours. The fox began to fade back into the shadows of the cage. Wake up, Izuku. I am going to sleep. Awakening in a new vessel takes energy, and this atmosphere is suffocating. Do not disturb me unless you are dying. Or if you have ramen? Actually, only if you have ramen. Wait. Izuku scrambled forward, grabbing the bars. What do I do? Everyone thinks I'm useless. Kaken. Mom. Kurama stopped. He looked back, one red eye glowing in the dark. Naruto was the dead last. The failure. The outcast. And he became the god of shinobi. Useless? Useless is a state of mind, Kit. The fox grinned, a sharp, fox-like expression that was equal parts terrifying and encouraging. Show them. Don't whine about it. Do it. That is your nindo. Your ninja way. Now, begone. A massive tail swept forward, slamming into the water, creating a tidal wave that washed over Izuku, drowning him in light. Izuku! Izuku, please open your eyes. The world rushed back in a blur of white light and panic. Izuku gasped, sitting bolt upright on the hospital bed. He was drenched in sweat. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Inko was there, clutching his hand, her face streaked with tears. Dr. Garaki was standing by the door, looking mildly annoyed but feigning concern. A nurse was checking a monitor that beeped steadily. Mom? Izuku's voice was raspy. Oh, thank God. Inko threw her arms around him, squeezing him tight. You fainted right in the office. You've been out for 20 minutes. The doctor said it was just a stress reaction, but I was so worried. Izuku blinked, looking over his mother's shoulder. He looked at his hands. They looked the same. He wiggled his toes. Same toes, but the air felt different. He looked at the nurse. He didn't just see a person. He saw a faint, fuzzy outline of blue energy around her. It was dim and sluggish, but it was there. He looked at his mother. Her energy was brighter, warm and frantic, swirling around her chest. He looked at Dr. Garaki. The doctor's energy was wrong. It was cold. Slippery. And there was a darkness to it, hidden deep, like oil under water. Chakra, Izuku thought. The word sat on his tongue like a familiar candy. I can see their energy. I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said. He was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. The high-pitched wobble of a scared toddler was gone, replaced by a strange calmness. I'm okay. We should go home, Inko sniffed, wiping her eyes. You've had a terrible shock. We'll get you some katsudon, and you can rest. Yes, Garaki said, adjusting his glasses. Take him home. He is physically fine. Just disappointed. It is a heavy burden to be quirkless in this society. Izuku looked at the doctor. For a second, the 4-year-old's green eyes shifted. The pupil didn't change shape, but the weight behind the gaze became heavy. Predatory. I'm not broken, doctor, Izuku said quietly. Garaki paused, his hand on the doorknob. He looked back, a flicker of genuine unease crossing his face. Of course not, my boy. Just unfortunate. The ride home was silent. The rain had started to fall, drumming a melancholy rhythm against the roof of the taxi. Inko stared out the window, her hand gripping Izuku's tightly. She was already spiraling, Izuku realized. She was blaming herself. She was thinking about his future, about how hard his life would be, about how she hadn't given him the tools to protect himself. Izuku sat quietly, but his mind was a storm. He closed his eyes and tried to find that place again. The sewer. He couldn't see it, but he could feel the connection. A hum in his stomach. The seal. He focused on his breathing. In. Out. Memories that weren't his floated to the surface. Control, a voice whispered. It sounded like a man with spiky silver hair and a mask. Mold the chakra. Need the physical energy and the spiritual energy. Izuku tried. He imagined the energy in his body. He tried to move it to his hand. Nothing happened. Blocked, he realized. My coils are tight. Atrophied. I need to force them open. It would take work. Hard work. Years of work. He looked at his reflection in the taxi window. A small, freckled face looked back. Big, watery green eyes. Messy green hair. I don't look like him, Izuku thought, thinking of the blonde boy from the vision. But I feel like him. He felt a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. A mischievous, stubborn grin. Databeo, he thought. The word made no sense, but it felt right. They arrived at the apartment complex. The walk up the stairs felt long. When they entered the apartment, the silence of the home felt oppressive. Usually, Izuku would run to the computer. He would ask to watch the video. The debut. All Might saving the people. Fear not, for I am here. Inko moved to the kitchen to start the katsudon, her movements sluggish. Mom? Inko turned. Yes, sweetie? Can we watch the video? Inko's face crumpled. She looked like she had been slapped. Izuku, honey, do you really want to? After. Yes, Izuku said firmly. Please, Inko nodded, a fresh wave of tears threatening to spill. She walked to the living room and booted up the computer. Her hands shook as she clicked the link. The video played. The disaster site. The fire. The debris. And then All Might. Bursting onto the scene with a smile that defied the darkness. Carrying people on his back. Laughing in the face of danger. In the past, Izuku watched this video and thought, he's so cool. He has a strong quirk. I want to be strong like that. Now, Izuku watched with new eyes. He didn't see the quirk. He didn't see the super strength. He saw the burden. He saw the way All Might stood between the innocent and the danger. He saw a man who had decided to be a wall that would not break. He's like the fourth, Izuku thought. Or the third. He's the Hokage of this world. The video ended. The room was silent. Inko turned the swivel chair around. She looked at her son, who was staring at the black screen. This was the moment. In another life, in the original timeline, Inko would have hugged him and apologized. She would have said, "I'm sorry, Izuku." She would have confirmed his worst fear, that he couldn't be a hero. Inko took a breath. "Izuku." She moved toward him. She dropped to her knees and hugged him. "Izuku. I'm so sorry," she cried into his shoulder. "I'm sorry you can't be a hero. I'm sorry." Izuku stood there. He felt her tears soaking his shirt. In the original timeline, he would have cried with her. He would have internalized that apology as a confirmation of his failure. But this was not that timeline. Izuku placed his small hands on his mother's shoulders. He pushed her back gently. Inko looked up, surprised by the force. Izuku wasn't crying. His eyes were dry. They were burning with an intensity that startled her. It was the look of a soldier. A leader. "Why are you sorry, Mom?" Izuku asked. His voice was calm. Because you." Inko stammered. Without a quirk, Izuku smiled. It wasn't the polite, anxious smile he usually wore. It was a wide, toothy grin that scrunched up his nose. It was a grin that said, "Just watch me." "I don't need a quirk, Mom," Izuku said. He tapped his chest, right over his heart. "I have guts." He stepped back, raising a fist. "The doctor said I'm normal? He said I'm empty." "But he's wrong." Izuku closed his eyes. He concentrated. He remembered the feeling of the fox. The heat. He remembered the feeling of the wind. Leaf concentration practice. Step 1. He focused all his mental energy on his fingertip. He pushed. He strained. For a fraction of a second, a tiny, almost invisible spark of blue static electricity jumped from his index finger. It was nothing. A static shock. But to Izuku, it was a Rasengan. He opened his eyes. "I'm going to be a hero, Mom," Izuku stated. "I'm going to be the greatest hero the world has ever seen. I'm going to be the one who surpasses all might." He pointed his thumb at his chest. "I'm Izuku Midoriya. And I never go back on my word." Inko stared at him. She stopped crying. The despair that had been crushing her seemed to evaporate in the face of her son's overwhelming confidence. She didn't understand it. She didn't know where it came from, but looking at him, standing there with his feet planted wide and his fists raised, she believed him. "Okay," she whispered. She wiped her face and managed a watery smile. "Okay, Izuku. I believe you." That night, Izuku didn't sleep. He sat cross-legged on his bed, the moonlight filtering through the window. His All Might posters watched him from the walls. He held his hands together in a specific seal, the Ram seal. His fingers were clumsy, his muscles unused to the precise movements required for ninjutsu. First, he thought, the voice in his head sounding remarkably mature. "I need to fix this body. It's too weak. If I try to channel Kurama's chakra now, I'll explode." He made a mental list. 1. Physical conditioning. Running. Push-ups. Squats. Until I puke. Then more. 2. Meditation. I need to widen my spiritual energy. I need to connect with the chakra network. 3. Leaf-sticking practice. I need to control the flow. He looked at his bedside table. There was a notebook there. Hero analysis for the future number 1. He grabbed it and a crayon. He flipped to a fresh page. He drew a stick figure. Then, he drew a spiral on the figure's stomach. He wrote a word next to it. He didn't know the kanji yet, so he wrote it in hiragana. Chakra. Then he turned the page. He drew a picture of Kaken. He drew a log next to him. Substitution jutsu, he thought. The first step to not getting blown up tomorrow. Izuku closed the book. He took a deep breath, inhaling through his nose, exhaling through his mouth. He felt the tiny, dormant coils in his stomach twitch. It was going to be a long road. He was 4 years old. He had no teachers. He had a demon fox sleeping in his gut who thought he was pathetic. He had a best friend who wanted to blow him up. He had a society that viewed him as barely human. Izuku grinned in the darkness. "Perfect," he whispered. The wind outside picked up, rustling the leaves of the tree outside his window. It almost sounded like a voice, carrying a whisper from a faraway land. from a time long past. Go get him, 7th. Izuku closed his eyes and began to meditate. The will of fire had been lit in Yuzurifu, and nothing was going to put it out. 10 years is a long time. For a mountain, it is a blink of an eye. For a nation, it is a single administration. But for a boy growing from 4 to 14, it is an eternity. It is the span of time where bones lengthen, voices drop, and the world hardens from a playground into a battlefield. For Izuku Midoriya, 10 years was a training montage. The alarm clock on his bedside table didn't get a chance to scream. A hand, wrapped in white bandages, slapped the snooze button with precise, practiced lethargy a millisecond before the mechanism triggered. Izuku rolled out of bed, his feet hitting the floorboards with a heavy thud. He wasn't the scrawny, trembling sapling he had been at 4. At 14, he was a knot of whipcord muscle and kinetic energy. He stretched, his spine popping in 3 places, and yawned wide enough to show his canines, which had grown and slightly sharper than his mother remembered hers being. He walked to the mirror. The boy staring back had the same unruly green curls, but the eyes were different. The timid emerald pools were now brighter, burning with a perpetual, mischievous spark. And then there were the whiskers. Well, not real whiskers. But the 3 jagged birthmarks on each cheek had darkened over the years, becoming prominent scars that gave him a feral, fox-like appearance when he grinned. Morning, fuzzball, Izuku muttered to his reflection. Respect your elders, brat, a voice rumbled in the back of his mind. It sounded like tectonic plates grinding together, filtered through a layer of deep, cynical exhaustion. And brush your teeth. Your breath smells like dead fish. That's rich coming from a fox living in a sewer, Izuku retorted mentally, grabbing his toothbrush. It is a mindscape. A representation of your chaotic psyche. If you tidied up your thoughts, maybe it wouldn't be a sewer. Izuku ignored the nine-tailed fox, Kurama, who had been his tenant, mentor, and biggest critic for the last decade. Their relationship was complicated. Kurama was technically a mass of hatred and chakra, but 10 years of watching a quirkless kid do push-ups until he vomited, meditate until his legs went numb, and study hero ethics until 3 a.m. had softened the beast. Slightly. Very slightly. Izuku spit out the toothpaste and splashed cold water on his face. He pulled on his school uniform, the black Gakurin of Aldera Junior High, but under the white dress shirt, he wore a mesh undershirt, and beneath that, a bright, obnoxious orange t-shirt. It was his lucky color. He didn't know why, exactly. He just knew that wearing orange made him feel invincible. It made him feel loud. Izuku! Breakfast! Inko's voice called from the kitchen. Coming, Mom! He grabbed his yellow backpack. It was heavy, weighed down not just by textbooks, but by ankle weights he had snuck into the lining. Time to face the music, he whispered, grabbing a black marker from his desk. He uncapped it, grinned at the mirror, and quickly drew a small, crude doodle of a spiral on his left palm. It was going to be a good day. He could feel it in his chakra. Aldera Junior High was a typical school, which meant it was a breeding ground for boredom, hormones, and petty cruelty. In a world where 80% of the population possessed superpowers, the social hierarchy was rigid. Strong quirks at the top, weak quirks in the middle, and at the bottom, the quirkless. Or at least, that's how it was supposed to work. Izuku Midoriya didn't seem to have received the memo. He walked through the gates of Aldera with a stride that was more of a bounce. He didn't keep his head down. He didn't hug the walls. He walked right down the center of the hallway, humming a tune that sounded vaguely like traditional flute music. Hey, look, it's Deku, a student with extendable fingers whispered. Does he have to walk like that? It's annoying. I heard he climbed the gym roof yesterday to retrieve a ball. Without a ladder. Liar. He's quirkless. Izuku ignored them. Or rather, he acknowledged them with a sunny, closed-eyed smile that was so disarming it usually confused people into silence. He reached his classroom, 3A. The door was closed. Izuku paused. He could sense the chakra signatures inside. He closed his eyes, extending his senses. It was a skill Kurama had forced him to learn, sensory perception. It wasn't perfect yet. He couldn't pinpoint exact locations like a GPS, but he could feel intent. He felt a spike of spicy, aggressive heat right near the door. Kaken, Izuku smirked. Bucket trap? Or maybe a classic explosive palm on the door handle? Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, flat stone he picked up from the riverbank during his morning training. He channeled a tiny thread of chakra into his fingers, wind nature. He wasn't strong enough to cut leaves in half yet, but he could create a pressurized cushion. He slid the door open with a snap. Boom! A small explosion detonated right at face level. Smoke filled the entrance. Ha! Got him! Katsuki Bakugo's voice rang out, harsh and triumphant. Teach you to walk in like you own the place, you damn nerd! The class erupted into laughter. The smoke cleared. Izuku was gone. Huh! Bakugo blinked, his hands still smoking. Up here, Kaken, a voice chirped. The entire class craned their necks. Izuku was crouching on the top of the doorframe, balancing on the narrow wooden lip like a gargoyle. He was perfectly clean, not a smudge of soot on him. Your reaction time is getting sloppy, Izuku teased, hopping down and landing silently. You telegraphed that attack with your killing intent. It was practically screaming, I am going to explode the door. Bakugo's face turned a shade of red that defied physics. Get down from there, you quirkless monkey! How did you do that? Did you hide a support item? Just knees, Kaken. Good knees. Izuku walked past him, patting Bakugo on the shoulder. Bakugo swatted the hand away, sparks flying. Don't touch me, Deku! Izuku took his seat at the back of the class. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13, and began sketching the layout of the classroom, analyzing the blast radius of Bakugo's prank. Entry angle, 90 degrees. Blast yield, low. Intention, humiliation, not injury. Conclusion, Kaken is soft today. He's not soft, Kurama huffed. He's arrogant. He thinks you're a bug. You don't use a cannon to kill a mosquito. You use a swatter. He's holding back because he doesn't think you're worth the full payload. We'll see about that, Izuku thought, spinning his pen. The teacher walked in a moment later, looking beleaguered. All right, settle down. I have the career aptitude forms here to pass out. The class groaned. But the teacher smirked, throwing the papers into the air. Why bother? I know you all want to be heroes. The class erupted into cheers, everyone showing off their quirks. Stones levitated, eyes glowed, arms stretched. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said. But no power usage in school. Now let's see. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, correct? Bakugo kicked his feet up onto his desk. Don't lump me in with these extras, sensei. I'm the only one here with the stuff to make the big leagues. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the richest hero of all time. Oh, right, the teacher mused, looking at his clipboard. And Midoriya is also applying to UA. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that precedes a thunderclap. Then, the laughter started. It wasn't friendly. It was mocking, incredulous laughter. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course without a quirk. He's delusional. Bakugo slammed his hands onto his desk. Boom. DKU. Bakugo lunged across the room. Forget the crappy quirks of these extras. You're totally quirkless. You think you can rub shoulders with me? He swung a right hook, explosions popping in his palm. It was a fast strike. For a normal middle schooler, it would have been unavoidable. But Izuku had spent 10 years playing tag with his own shadow. He didn't block. He didn't cower. He simply shifted. He leaned his upper body back, the explosion detonating harmlessly inches from his nose, blowing his bangs back. Personal space, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. You're gonna trigger the sprinkler system. Stop dodging! Bakugo roared, swinging his other hand. Izuku caught Bakugo's wrist. The class gasped. Izuku didn't squeeze. He didn't crush. He just used the momentum. He planted his foot, twisted his hips, and used the basic Aikido redirection, though in his head, he called it Taijutsu Form 4. He guided Bakugo's force past him, causing the blonde bomber to stumble and slam into the lockers at the back of the room. It wasn't a fight. It was a matador sidestepping a bull. I'm not trying to compete with you, Kaken, Izuku said, dusting off his uniform. But they got rid of the rule. You don't need a quirk to apply. There's no harm in trying, is there? Bakugo recovered, his eyes white with rage. Smoke hissed from his palms. Trying? You're taking the exam just to die. You think the entrance exam is a joke? You have no power. I have other things, Izuku said vaguely. Like what? Tricks? Pranks? That log thing you do? Bakugo got in his face, his voice dropping to a growl. Listen to me, Deku. You're a pebble on the side of the road. Don't make me crush you into dust. That's enough. The teacher finally intervened, though he looked more annoyed than concerned. Bakugo, sit down. Midoriya, stop provoking him. Provoking him? Izuku thought, raising an eyebrow. I just didn't let him burn my face off. Humans, Kurama muttered. They fear what they don't understand. And they really don't understand you. Izuku sat back down. He looked at his hand. It was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline. The chakra in his gut was churning. It wanted to be let out. It wanted to roar. Calm down, he told the energy. Not yet. The time isn't right. The rest of the day passed in a blur of mundane classes. Math, easy, thanks to shadow clone memory training techniques he couldn't actually use yet but simulated mentally. English, present mix radio show was a great tutor, and history. When the final bell rang, Izuku packed his bag quickly. He wanted to get to the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was his training ground, a massive trash heap he had been slowly cleaning for 3 years. He called it the Great Cleanup Mission, Rank D. He was just about to check his phone for hero news when a shadow fell over his desk. Bakugo. Again. We're not done, Bakugo said. He snatched the notebook from Izuku's hand. Hero analysis for the future? Seriously? He clapped his hands around the book. Boom. Smoke curled from the charred cover. Hey! Izuku stood up, his playful demeanor vanishing. That's mine. Most people graduate from their imaginary fantasies by now, Bakugo sneered. He tossed the burned notebook out the open window. It fluttered down toward the koi pond below. Izuku watched it go. His fists clenched at his sides. Here's some advice, Bakugo said, placing a smoking hand on Izuku's shoulder, burning the fabric. Don't apply to UA. You'll just embarrass yourself. He turned to leave, his lackeys snickering behind him. But at the door, Bakugo stopped. He looked back, a cruel glint in his eye. Actually, if you want to be a hero so bad, there is a quick way. The room went silent. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The words hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Izuku stood frozen. Kill him, Kurama growled. The sheer malice in the fox's voice was like a bucket of ice water. Let me out. One tail. I'll rip his throat out. Nobody talks to my vessel like that. No, Izuku thought forcefully. No killing. But the anger was there. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger of Bakugo. It was a cold, sharp wind. Izuku turned slowly. Bakugo was already walking away, laughing. Izuku took a deep breath. He channeled chakra to his feet. Body flicker technique, Shunshin, imperfect variant. He didn't have the speed for a true Shunshin, but he had burst speed. Whoosh. 1 second, Izuku was by his desk. The next, he was directly behind Bakugo, whispering in his ear. If I die, Kaken, Izuku whispered, his voice devoid of humor, that would make you a murderer. That wouldn't look good on a UA application, would it? Bakugo spun around, swinging an explosion, but he hit nothing but air. Izuku was already at the door, walking out. He didn't look back. He just waved a hand over his shoulder. See ya tomorrow, Kaken. Try not to pop a blood vessel. Bakugo stood in the hallway, staring at the empty space where Deku had been. A chill ran down his spine. For a fleeting second, when Deku had whispered in his ear, Bakugo hadn't felt like he was talking to a quirkless nerd. He felt like he was standing next to a predator that had decided not to bite. Izuku fished his notebook out of the koi pond. Stupid fish, he muttered, shaking the dripping book. At least the ink is waterproof. The blonde one needs a lesson in humility, Kurama grumbled. He's just frustrated, Izuku said, starting his walk home. He's been told he's a god since he was 4. He can't handle the idea that the world isn't bending around him. He reminds me of Sasuke, Kurama said. Only louder. And less brooding. More screaming. Sasuke was the guy who tried to kill the previous me, right? Repeatedly. They were best friends. Ninja relationships are weird, Izuku concluded. He decided to take the shortcut through the underpass. It was darker, but it shaved 10 minutes off his commute, giving him more time to haul trash at the beach. As he walked into the tunnel, the light from the entrance faded. The shadows lengthened. Izuku stopped. The manhole cover in front of him rattled. Danger, Kurama warned. Move. Izuku didn't ask questions. He leaped backward, springing off his toes just as a geyser of sludge erupted from the sewer grate. The sludge swelled, forming a grotesque, liquid shape with wide, manic eyes and a mouth full of yellow teeth. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain gurgled. Perfect. Izuku landed in a crouch, his eyes widening. A villain? Here? In the middle of the day? Don't worry, kid, the sludge hissed, lunging forward like a tidal wave. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over. I just need your body to hide. Izuku reacted on instinct. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of shuriken. Well, they were actually flattened pieces of scrap metal he had filed into stars, but they flew the same. Take this. He threw them. They struck the sludge and sank right in. Fluids, Izuku cursed. Physical attacks are useless. The sludge tentacle lashed out. Izuku dodged left, rolling along the concrete wall. He channeled chakra to his feet to stick to the wall walking practice. But the concrete was slick with slime, and his concentration wavered. He slipped. That second was all the villain needed. The sludge crashed over him. It wasn't like water. It was heavy, suffocating, and smelled like rotting garbage and sewage. It forced its way into his nose and mouth. You can't grab me. The villain laughed. I'm fluid. Thanks for the ride, kid. Izuku clawed at the slime. His fingers passed right through. He couldn't breathe. His vision started to spot with black. I can't breathe. Kit! Focus! Kurama roared in his mind. Mold the chakra. Burst it out, Izuku tried. He tried to summon the energy in his gut. But panic was a poison to chakra control. He was suffocating. The fear of death was primal, overriding his training. Is this it? Am I going to die here? Before I even start? His strength was fading. His thrashing slowed. That's it, the villain cooed. Just let go. No. Izuku thought. I haven't become. Clang! The manhole cover flew into the air. Fear not. A voice, booming and heroic, echoed through the tunnel. It sounded like hope itself. Why? A massive figure stood at the entrance, silhouetted by the light. He was huge, muscular, and radiating an intensity that blew away the gloom of the underpass. Because I am here, the villain shrieked. All Might? All Might didn't waste time. He pulled back a fist. The air pressure in the tunnel changed instantly. Izuku could feel the wind gathering, a vacuum forming around the hero's arm. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't even touch the villain. The wind pressure did. A massive cannonball of compressed air blasted through the tunnel. The sludge villain was vaporized, not killed, but scattered into 1,000 tiny droplets, splattering against the walls and ceiling. Izuku was thrown back by the gale, tumbling across the pavement. He gasped, sucking in sweet, precious air. Ha ha! He looked up. His vision was blurry, but he could see him, the symbol of peace. Standing tall. Smoking slightly. Are you all right, young man? All Might asked, marching over with a booming laugh. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I usually keep the city cleaner than this. Izuku scrambled to his feet. All Might. You're real. I am indeed. All Might laughed. He quickly began scooping up the sludge into empty soda bottles. Now, I must be off. Evil never sleeps, and neither does the paperwork. Wait. Izuku stepped forward. He had so many questions. He needed to know. He needed to ask the man who stood at the pinnacle. Can I ask you something? No time, my boy. Stay out of trouble. All Might crouched, his legs tensing like steel springs. He leaped. Izuku didn't think. It was the impulsive nature of the Uzumaki soul overriding the Midoriya caution. He jumped too. Hey! All Might shouted as he felt a weight on his leg. He looked down. Izuku was clinging to his calf, his face rippling in the wind force. Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed, the wind flapping his lips. Ah. Good point. They landed on a rooftop a few miles away. Izuku collapsed, his legs shaking. That was terrifying. He wheezed. You have the survival instincts of a lemming, Kurama observed. All Might dusted himself off. That was reckless, young man. Bang on the door next time. Now I really must go. Wait. Izuku scrambled up. Please. Just one question. All Might paused. He seemed to be straining. Steam was rising from his body. I need to know, Izuku said, clutching his chest. I was told I can't be a hero. I don't have a quirk. All Might stopped. He didn't turn around. I have something else, Izuku continued, his voice trembling but gaining strength. I have a power that comes from inside. From spirit. But the world tells me it's not enough. They tell me I need a quirk to be a symbol. Suddenly, a cloud of steam exploded around All Might. Poof! Izuku coughed, waving the smoke away. All Might? When the smoke cleared, the muscular titan was gone. In his place stood a skeletal man with sunken eyes, sharp angles, and messy hair. He looked like a scarecrow made of sharp elbows. Eh? Izuku shrieked. You deflated. Where did the rest of you go? It's just a flex, the man sighed, blood trickling from his mouth. Like guys sucking in their gut at the pool. He sat down heavily on the ventilation unit. Look, kid. Don't post this on social media, alright? He lifted his shirt. Izuku gasped. The scar was horrific. It looked like a spiderweb of purple and red tissue, covering half of his torso. It looked like a crater. I got this 5 years ago, All Might said softly. Respiratory system destroyed. Stomach removed. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. The rest of the time. On this, Izuku stared at the wound. His medical knowledge, thanks to his notebooks, told him this was fatal. The man should be dead. I smiled to hide the fear, All Might admitted. I smiled to trick the fear inside me, and to put the public at ease. Being the symbol of peace, it's not just about being strong. It's about being unbreakable, even when you're broken. He looked at Izuku with tired, blue eyes. Pros are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. So no. I honestly don't think you can be a hero without a quirk. The words landed softly. They weren't cruel. They were realistic. If you want to help people, become a police officer. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. All Might stood up and walked toward the door to the stairwell. It's good to have dreams, young man. But you have to make sure they're attainable. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. The wind blew, ruffling his green hair. Well, Kurama said, his voice surprisingly gentle. That was harsh. Are you going to cry? Izuku looked at the door. He looked at his hands. He's wrong, Izuku whispered. Oh, he's wrong, Izuku said louder. He turned to look at the city skyline. He thinks the symbol of peace has to be a god. He thinks he has to carry it all alone. That's why he's dying. Izuku remembered the flashes of memory. The seventh Hokage sitting at a desk, surrounded by stacks of paper, exhausted, but with friends walking in and out. He remembered a war where everyone fought together. He's carrying the world on his back, Izuku said. But even Atlas shrugged. So? What do you do? I prove him wrong, Izuku said, his eyes narrowing. I don't need to be a god. I just need to be the guy who doesn't give up. That's what a symbol is. It's not the power. It's the guts. Boom. A massive explosion echoed in the distance. A pillar of smoke rose from the shopping district. Izuku stiffened. That sounded like explosions. That angry blonde kid, Kaken? Izuku ran to the edge of the roof. He saw the smoke. It was the same direction All Might had gone. The villain, Izuku realized, his stomach dropping. All Might dropped the bottles when I grabbed him. It's not your problem, Kurama said. The skeletal hero is down there. Let him handle it. He can't! Izuku yelled, already vaulting over the railing. He's out of time. He told me. Izuku landed on the fire escape and began sliding down the ladder. If I cause this, if Kaken is in trouble, you're going to get yourself killed. Shut up, Kurama! Izuku hit the ground running. He sprinted toward the smoke. He didn't run like a normal jogger. He leaned forward, arms trailing slightly behind him to reduce drag, or so he thought, channeling every ounce of his meager physical stamina into his legs. Wait for me, Kaken. The scene was chaos. Fire was everywhere. The sludge villain had reassembled and was currently drowning the center of the street in flames and slime. Heroes were standing around, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, but they were doing nothing. I can't get close. Death Arms yelled. The fire is too intense. I need a two-lane road. Empty Lady complained. And in the center of the inferno, the sludge villain had a hostage. Izuku skidded to a halt at the police barricade. He saw him, Bakugo. The sludge was forcing its way down Bakugo's throat. Explosions were popping sporadically from his palms, but they were weak, desperate. Bakugo's eyes were wide with terror, and in the crowd, Izuku saw All Might. He was clutching a lamppost, looking agonizingly at his hand, cursing his weakness. Nobody is moving, Izuku realized. They're all watching. They're waiting for someone with the right quirk. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's. For a moment, the arrogance was gone. There was only a silent plea. Help me. Izuku's mind went blank. He didn't think about his lack of a quirk. He didn't think about All Might's warning. His legs moved on their own. Hey! Kid! Get back here! A hero shouted. Izuku ducked under the police tape. He sprinted into the fire. The heat was intense, singeing his eyebrows. What do I do? What do I do? Use the chakra! Kurama yelled. Not the wind! You can't cut him! Distract him! Izuku reached into his pocket. He pulled out his backpack. Let him go! Izuku screamed. He hurled the backpack. It flew through the air, spinning. The zipper burst open, and a pencil case flew out, stabbing the sludge villain in the eye. Arg! The villain recoiled. The sludge loosened for a second. Bakugo gasped, sucking in air. Deku? Izuku didn't stop. He slid on his knees, skidding across the asphalt right up to the sludge. What are you doing here? Bakugo rasped. My legs just moved. Izuku yelled back, grabbing at the sludge. It was slippery, impossible to hold. But Izuku dug his fingers in. He looked at the villain. The eye was regenerating. A massive tendril was raising up to crush them both. I need power. Just for a second, Izuku closed his eyes. He reached deep. Past the fear. Past the logic. He reached for the gate. Kurama! Lend me a hand, just this once, brat. Because I hate this slime guy. A surge of red, angry chakra flooded Izuku's system. It wasn't a cloak. It was just a spark. But it was enough to supercharge his muscles. Izuku stood up. He slammed his hands together in a seal he had practiced 1,000 times in the mirror, but never successfully pulled off. Clone Jutsu, poof! A cloud of white smoke erupted next to him. From the smoke, another Izuku appeared. But this one wasn't a solid clone. It was a pale, sickly-looking copy that looked like it was made of pudding. It flopped onto the ground. A failed clone? The villain laughed. Pathetic, but the distraction worked. The villain paused to look at the floppy clone. That split second was all the opening needed. Detroit. Smash! All Might appeared. He had forced his muscle form, blood spraying from his mouth, but his smile was there. He drove a fist into the air pressure, creating a tornado that blasted the villain apart and put out the fires in a single stroke. Rain began to fall from the sudden change in atmospheric pressure. Izuku was blown back, tumbling across the wet pavement. He landed hard, staring up at the sky. He was alive. All Might stood victorious, steam rising from his body. Bakugo was coughing nearby. As the crowd cheered, Izuku felt a sharp pain in his gut. The red chakra faded, leaving him exhausted. That was the ugliest clone I have ever seen, Kurama noted dryly. Naruto would be ashamed. But it worked. Izuku smiled weakly. Shut up, fuzzball. The heroes swarmed them. Death Arms scolded Izuku for being reckless. The media praised Bakugo for his bravery, but Izuku wasn't listening. He was looking at All Might. And All Might was looking at him. There was a look in the hero's eyes. It wasn't pity anymore. It was recognition. Later that evening, walking home, Deku, Izuku turned. Bakugo ran up to him, panting. He looked furious. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. I was fine. You didn't save me. You're still a quirkless failure. Don't look down on me. He spun around and stomped off. Izuku watched him go. You're welcome, Kaken. He turned back to the path. And there, emerging from a side street, was All Might. I am here, he announced, striking a pose, before immediately coughing up blood and reverting to his skeleton form. All Might? Young man, All Might said, wiping his mouth. I have a confession. I scolded you earlier. I told you to give up. But at that scene, you were the only one who moved. All Might took a step forward. The setting sun cast long shadows, framing the hero in gold. The best heroes often have stories about their bodies moving before they could think. That happened to you today, didn't it? Izuku felt the tears welling up. The dam was breaking. All the years of being told no. All the years of I'm sorry. You looked that fear in the face, All Might said. You, who had no power, were the bravest one there. Izuku fell to his knees, clutching his chest. Young man, All Might said, extending a hand. I've been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power. And I think I've found him. He smiled. You can be a hero, Izuku cried. He sobbed into the pavement. But in his mind, the fox chuckled. About time someone noticed, Kurama said. But inherit his power? We don't need it. We have the chakra. Shut up, Izuku thought through his tears. Just let me have this. Fine. But ask him if the power comes with ramen coupons. Otherwise it's a bad deal. Izuku laughed through his sobs. The sun set on Aldera, and the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and a new beginning. The prankster had been recognized. The ninja was awake, and the story was just beginning. The sunset bled across the sky, turning the clouds into bruised streaks of purple and gold. The air in the quiet residential street was still charged with the aftermath of the day's chaos. The smell of smoke, the dampness of the sudden rain, and the electric tension of a life-altering revelation. Izuku Midoriya knelt on the pavement, his knees scraped and his uniform ruined. Tears streamed down his face, carving clean tracks through the soot and grime. You can be a hero. The words echoed in his mind, bouncing around his skull like a bell struck by a sledgehammer. They were the words he had waited his entire life to hear. They were the validation of his existence. But deep inside, in the damp, echoing sewer of his subconscious, a giant fox scoffed. Finally, Kurama grumbled, the vibration rattling Izuku's teeth. The skeleton man speaks some sense. Now stop crying, Kit. You're getting snot on the pavement. It's undignified for a Jinchuriki. Izuku sniffled, wiping his eyes with his forearm. He looked up at All Might, who was currently enveloped in a cloud of steam as he reverted to his true form, the emaciated, skeletal figure that looked less like a hero and more like a stiff breeze would snap him in half. I. Izuku tried to speak, but his voice cracked. All Might sat down on the guardrail, coughing slightly. He wiped a trickle of blood from his chin. You are worthy to inherit my power, the hero said, his voice grave and serious. But first, I must explain the nature of my ability. Izuku blinked, his analytical mind suddenly rebooting. Inherit? But quirks are genetic. They can't be passed down like a family heirloom. Ha! That is the common wisdom, yes, All Might said, looking at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. But my quirk is unique. It is a sacred torch, passed from one bearer to the next. It cultivates power, and then transfers it. Its name is One for All. One. For all, Izuku whispered. One person cultivates the power and passes it to another, who then cultivates it further and passes it on. It is the crystallization of power that spins together the voices of those who need help with a courageous heart. All Might stood up, striking a pose that looked painful in his weakened state. And now, it is your turn. You, the boy who moved when no one else dared. You shall be the next vessel. Izuku stared at him. The offer was unimaginable. The greatest power in the world. The power to be the symbol of peace. It was everything he wanted. But then, he felt a sharp tug in his gut. A pulse of heat. Vessel. The word triggered a memory. Not his memory, but his. A boy with blonde spiky hair sitting on a swing, clutching his stomach. A seal. A burden. A monster locked away. Izuku looked down at his hands. He had secrets too. Secrets that defied the laws of this world just as much as One for All did. If he accepted this power, he would be layering a mystery on top of an enigma. Could he lie to All Might? To the man who had just offered him the world, Naruto never went back on his word, Izuku thought. And he didn't hide who he was. Not really. Tell him, Kurama advised, his voice surprisingly serious. If you take this power blindly, the mix of my chakra and his energy might kill you. He needs to know what he's pouring water into. Izuku took a deep breath. He stood up, dusting off his knees. The tears had stopped. His expression hardened, shifting from the weeping fanbot to something older. Something solemn. All Might, Izuku said. Yes, young man, I want to accept. More than anything. Izuku clenched his fists at his sides. But before I do, there's something you need to know. Something about me. All Might tilted his head, intrigued by the sudden shift in the boy's demeanor. Go on. You said I was quirkless, Izuku began. And biologically you're right. I have the extra toe joint. I have no genetic factor. He looked All Might in the eye. But I'm not empty. Izuku stepped forward. He closed his eyes and focused. He didn't try to summon the red cloak. That was too dangerous. He focused on the feeling of the sewer. The damp walls. The cage. He channeled a tiny fraction of his own spiritual energy, mixing it with the residue of Kurama's intent. The air around them grew heavy. It wasn't the pressure of wind like All Might's power. It was a dense, suffocating weight. It felt like standing in a forest where every tree was watching you with hungry eyes. All Might stiffened. His sunken eyes widened. What is this pressure? I am a reincarnation, Izuku said, his voice dropping an octave, sounding strangely layered. I have memories of a past life. A life where people didn't have quirks, but used energy called chakra. And inside me, Izuku opened his eyes. For a split second, they flashed red with a vertical slit pupil. Inside me lives a tailed beast. The nine-tailed fox. Kurama. The silence on the street was absolute. A stray cat knocked over a can in an alleyway, the sound echoing like a gunshot. All Might stared. He blinked once. Twice. Then, he coughed up a terrifying amount of blood. A way out? 10 minutes later, they were sitting on a park bench. All Might had calmed down, though he kept glancing at Izuku's stomach with deep suspicion. So All Might said, looking skeptical. Let me get this straight. You were a ninja. A magical ninja. And now you have a giant fox demon living in your intestines. Ideally in a seal, Izuku corrected. It's more of a spiritual plane. A mindscape. And this? Kurama, is he evil? Tell him I resent the implication, Kurama snarled in Izuku's head. I am a force of nature. Evil is a human construct. He says he's a force of nature, Izuku translated. He used to be angry. Very angry. He destroyed villages. But the previous me, Naruto, befriended him. We're partners. Sort of. He mostly just complains about my math homework and calls me a brat. All Might rubbed his temples. This is a lot to process. I thought One for All was the strangest secret in the world. It seems I have competition. He looked at Izuku. Really looked at him. He saw the way the boy sat, alert, balanced, ready to move. He remembered the boy's movement during the sludge incident, the strange technique he used to distract the villain. The unexplainable durability. You said you used chakra, All Might noted. Is that a quirk? No, Izuku shook his head. Chakra is life energy. It's a mix of physical stamina and spiritual energy. Everyone has it, technically. But in this world, people evolved quirks and forgot how to use chakra. My coils, the pathways, they were dormant. I've been trying to wake them up for 10 years, so it is a cultivation of power, All Might mused. Similar to One for All, but biological rather than transferable. The hero leaned back, looking up at the darkening sky. Young Midoriya, if you already have this power, this chakra and this fox, do you even need mine? This was the question. Izuku looked at his hands. He summoned a tiny amount of chakra to his palm. It was weak, flickering like a dying candle. My body isn't from a ninja lineage, Izuku explained. I'm a Midoriya. My ancestors were normal people. My chakra coils are small, fragile. Kurama, the fox, has too much power. If I tried to use his full strength now, I'd burn up. I'd die. He looked at All Might with burning determination. I need to make this body strong. Strong enough to hold the fox. Strong enough to hold One for All. I want your power, All Might. Not just to be strong, but because your power represents the will to save people. That's what I want to inherit. The will of fire. The will of fire, All Might repeated softly. He smiled. It was a genuine, small smile, devoid of the usual bombast. I like the sound of that. He stood up and pointed a bony finger at Izuku. Very well. I accept your condition and your secret. We shall forge you into a vessel capable of holding both the beast and the legend. But be warned, young Midoriya. The path I have set for you is not easy. It is a path of hellish training. Izuku jumped up, grinning. He gave a thumbs up. I'm ready. Believe it. The phrase slipped out before he could stop it. He blushed. Oh no, Kurama groaned. The catchphrase is back. God help us all. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. 3 days later. The beach was a graveyard of modernity. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, driftwood, and unidentifiable plastic sludge stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a monument to apathy. Izuku stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a blue tracksuit. All Might stood beside him, and his muscle formed for dramatic effect, though he was steaming slightly. This, All Might boomed, gesturing to the trash heap, is your first step. This beach used to be a beautiful park. Now, it is a dumping ground. The currents wash debris here, and the people, seeing the mess, add to it. They assume someone else will clean it up. He turned to Izuku. Heroes do not wait for someone else. Heroes take the initiative. Young Midoriya, you shall restore this beach to its former glory. You will clear this entire section of coastline. All of it? Izuku asked, eyeing a little truck that was half buried in the sand. All of it. In 10 months. Before the UA entrance exam. All Might produced a stack of papers. I have created the Aim to Pass, American Dream Plan. It details your diet, your sleep, and your workout regimen down to the last calorie. Izuku took the papers. He scanned them quickly. Protein heavy, Izuku muttered. Focus on core strength and lower back. Good for stability. Exactly. One for All requires a strong vessel. If you accepted the power now, your limbs would shoot off your body. Right. Exploding limbs? Bad, Izuku noted. Add something to the list, Kurama interjected. Chakra control. While you're exhausting your body, your spiritual energy will be in flux. It's the perfect time to force the coils to expand. When the body is broken, the spirit takes over. All Might. Izuku raised his hand. Yes, my boy, I need to add my own training to this. Ninja training? All Might laughed. By all means. Whatever helps you survive my regime. Month 1, the grind. The first month was, to put it mildly, hell. Izuku had thought he was fit. He did push-ups. He ran. He practiced taijutsu forms in his room. But hauling a refrigerator through soft sand while an iconic superhero sat on top of it shouting encouragement was a different beast entirely. Put your back into it. Squeeze your buttocks. All Might shouted from his perch atop the appliance, which was strapped to Izuku's back. I am squeezing. Izuku grunted, his face buried in the sand as he crawled. Every muscle fiber screamed. His lungs burned. But as the physical exhaustion set in, Izuku felt something else. The chakra in his gut was responding to the stress. It was like a second heart, beating in rhythm with his struggles. Focus, he told himself. Don't just pull with your muscles. Reinforce the muscles with chakra. He imagined the blue energy coating his legs. It was slippery, hard to grasp. It was like trying to hold water in a sieve. Too much, Kurama lectured. You're leaking energy everywhere. Tighten the flow. Don't pour a bucket when a cup will do. Izuku gritted his teeth. He dialed back the energy, focusing it solely on his calves. Suddenly, the refrigerator felt lighter. Just a fraction. Izuku surged forward, dragging the appliance 5 feet before collapsing. Excellent burst of speed. All Might cheered. But don't push until you vomit. Oh wait, too late. Month 3. The tree. The beach was starting to show patches of sand. Small patches, but they were there. Izuku's body was changing. The softness of childhood was melting away, replaced by the defined, corded muscle of a fighter. But today, All Might arrived to find Izuku doing something odd. Izuku wasn't hauling trash. He was running at a palm tree that grew near the promenade. He ran at the trunk. He took 1 step up the vertical surface. 2 steps. 3 steps. Then, the bark exploded under his foot, and he fell backward, landing in the sand with a thud. Damn it, Izuku cursed, rubbing his head. Too much power again. Young Midoriya? All Might approached, holding 2 bento boxes. Why are you attacking the vegetation? I'm not attacking it. Izuku sat up, spitting out sand. I'm trying to walk up it. All Might looked at the tree. Vertically? Yeah. It's a basic chakra control exercise. You focus chakra to the soles of your feet. If you use too little, you slide off. If you use too much, you push the tree away and explode the bark. He pointed to the gouge mark on the trunk. I'm stuck on exploding the bark. Fascinating. All Might rubbed his chin. It sounds like fine-tuning your output. One for all requires similar control. If you use 100% all the time, you break everything around you. You must learn to dial it back. Exactly. Izuku beamed. If I can master this, I can master OFA faster. Well then. All Might set the bento down. Eat first. Then, show me this tree walking again. I wish to see the physics of it. By the end of the month, Izuku made it to the top of the tree. He stood upside down on a branch, 20 feet in the air, gravity pulling at his hair but his feet glued to the wood. Look, All Might! Izuku yelled, waving. I did it! All Might stared up, his mouth agape. He is literally defying gravity. Science has left the chat. Humph, Kurama snorted. Took him long enough. Naruto did it in a week. But then again, Naruto had a rivalry to fuel him. This brat only has trash. Month 5, the mental block. School was becoming a blur. Izuku would sleep through most of his classes, exhausted from the morning training. His grades didn't slip. Izuku's intellect was sharp, and shadow clone memory retention techniques, even without the clones, helped him organize information efficiently, but his social presence vanished. He was a ghost. Even Bakugo stopped harassing him as much. Mostly because every time Bakugo approached, Izuku was already asleep, drooling on his desk. Hey, Deku! Bakugo kicked Izuku's chair. Izuku jerked awake. What? No, All Might, I didn't eat the tire. Bakugo stared at him. You look like crap. Are you dying? Training, Izuku mumbled, rubbing his eyes. He looked at Bakugo. He could sense the boy's chakra. It was spiky, anxious. Bakugo was training hard too. He could feel the residue of nitroglycerin sweat in the air. Don't think you can beat me just because you're doing some push-ups, Bakugo scoffed, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Izuku's shoulders were broader. His neck was thicker. The nerd was turning into a tank. I'm not trying to beat you, Kaken, Izuku yawned. I'm trying to survive the beach. The hell does that mean? But Izuku was already asleep again. That afternoon, at the beach, Izuku hit a wall. He was trying to move a rusted truck chassis. It wouldn't budge. His legs were shaking. His vision blurred. I can't, Izuku wheezed. It's too heavy. Take a break, young Midoriya. All Might called out. You're overexerting. No! Izuku gritted his teeth. If I can't move this, how can I save anyone? He pushed harder. And then, he felt it. The seal weakened. You need a boost, Kurama whispered. Just a sip. Red chakra leaked into Izuku's system. It wasn't the gentle blue chakra. It was corrosive. Burning, Izuku screamed. His eyes turned red. His fingernails elongated into claws, digging into the metal of the truck. With a feral roar, he ripped the chassis from the sand and threw it, not dragged it. Threw it. The metal carcass flew 10 feet and crashed into a pile of garbage. Izuku fell to his knees, panting. The red faded. His hands were burned, steam rising from his skin. All Might was by his side in an instant. Midoriya! What was that? The fox, Izuku gasped, clutching his stomach. He helped. That felt dangerous, All Might said, his face stern. It felt like malice. It is, Izuku admitted. Its hatred turned into power. If I use too much, I lose myself. Then we must be careful, All Might said, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Power without control is just destruction. We are building a hero, not a monster. Izuku nodded. He looked at his hands. The burns were already healing. Don't listen to him, Kurama muttered. Power is power. But, he has a point. Your body almost snapped. You need better control. Time for the water. Month 8. Walking on water. The tide was coming in. The waves crashed against the shore, frothy and cold. Water walking, Izuku explained, standing at the edge of the surf. It's harder than trees. The water moves. You have to constantly adjust your chakra flow to match the surface tension. And this will help you carry the heavy trash? All Might asked, sitting on a clean patch of sand. It builds focus. And balance. Izuku took a breath. He stepped onto the water. Splash. He sank immediately to his waist. Damn it! He waded back out. He tried again. Splash. Again. Splash. For 3 weeks, this was the routine. Izuku would haul trash for 3 hours, then spend an hour falling into the ocean. All Might watched, fascinated. He saw the determination. He saw the guts. One evening, as the sun was setting, the sea was rough. The waves were choppy. Izuku stood on the sand. He closed his eyes. Be the leaf, he thought. Be the ripple. He didn't try to fight the water. He tried to understand it. He stepped out. His foot hit the water, and stayed there. He took another step. The water surface dipped under his weight, rubbery and tense, but it held. Izuku ran. He sprinted across the tops of the waves, moving with the rhythm of the ocean. He ran out 50 yards, turned, and ran back. He leaped from a wave crest and landed on the sand, dry as a bone. I did it! Izuku shouted, throwing his arms up. All Might clapped, a booming sound like thunder. Magnificent! Simply magnificent! You are walking on water! If I didn't know better, I'd say you were a saint, just a ninja. Izuku laughed. He felt it then. The coils in his body were singing. They were wide open. The connection between his mind and his body was seamless. He was ready. Month 10, the day of destiny. The morning of the entrance exam arrived. All Might stood on the seawall, looking down at the beach. Where there had been mountains of garbage, there was now pristine, white sand. The sunrise glittered off the ocean, unobstructed by debris. The seagulls cried overhead. And in the center of the clean beach, atop a massive pile of the final, heaviest trash, stood Izuku Midoriya. He was shirtless, screaming at the sky. Gra-wa! His body was chiseled. Not the bulky, stared muscle of some heroes, but the lean, functional muscle of a martial artist. Scars, small ones from the trash, and the whisker marks on his face, caught the light. He looked wild. He looked powerful. All Might jumped down, landing softly in the sand. Oh my goodness! All Might yelled, reverting to buff form. You didn't just clean the section. You cleaned the whole park. You went beyond. Izuku slid down the pile of trash, landing in front of his mentor. He was panting, sweating, but his eyes were clear. I finished, Izuku said. I'm ready. You are, All Might agreed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single strand of golden hair. You have mastered your body. You have awakened your chakra. You have tamed the basics of the beast. Now you must accept the torch. All Might held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku blinked. The epic music in his head scratched to a halt. Excuse me? It contains my DNA. It is the fastest way to transfer the power. Eat it. Disgusting, Kurama gagged. Human rituals are gross. Just bite his finger or something. Blood is better. No biting. Izuku said aloud. Just eat the hair, young Midoriya. We are running late. Izuku took the hair. He looked at it. It was stiff and sharp. For the power. For the dream. For the will of fire. He gulped it down. Ugh. It tastes like hairspray and justice. The power will take a few hours to digest and manifest, All Might explained, checking his watch. You will likely feel it during the exam. But listen to me, Izuku. All Might placed both hands on Izuku's shoulders. You have a power inside you that is yours, the chakra. You have a tenet that is ancient, the fox. And now, you have the crystallized power of 8 generations of heroes. All Might's blue eyes bored into Izuku's green ones. Don't try to be All Might. And don't try to be this Naruto you remember. Be Izuku Midoriya. Create your own legacy. A legacy of fists that save people. Izuku felt a surge of emotion. He bowed low, a perfect, traditional martial arts bow. Thank you, All Might Sensei. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Now go. Go to UA and show them that you are here. Izuku grabbed his bag and sprinted away. He didn't just run. He channeled chakra to his feet. Body flicker. He blurred, kicking up a cloud of sand, disappearing down the street at a speed that would have earned him a speeding ticket if he were a car. All Might watched him go. He slowly reverted to his skeletal form, wiping blood from his lip. He's fast, All Might whispered to the empty beach. Faster than I was at his age. He looked at the rising sun, the will of fire, and one for all. What a terrifying combination. I pity the villains who have to face him. All Might chuckled, then winced as his side ached. But first, let's see if he can survive the written exam without the fox eating his pencil. Izuku arrived at the gates of UA High with 10 minutes to spare. The massive glass structures glittered in the sun. The H-shaped building loomed over him, promising a future that had seemed impossible 10 months ago. Students were filing in. Izuku saw Bakugo walking ahead, hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to murder the pavement. Out of my way, extras, Bakugo grumbled. Izuku smiled. He felt the hum of one for all starting to stir in his stomach, sitting right next to the massive, burning sun that was Kurama. He took a step forward. Trip. His foot caught on the edge of a paving stone. Classic, Izuku thought as gravity took hold. 10 months of ninja training, and I trip on a rock. He braced for impact. But he didn't hit the ground. He floated. Are you okay? A bubbly voice. Izuku looked up. A girl with brown hair and rosy cheeks was touching his backpack, her pinky raised. I stopped you with my quirk, she said, smiling brightly. It's bad luck to fall on the entrance exam. She righted him and released the gravity. I'm Uraraka. Good luck. She waved and walked away. Izuku stood there stunned. I talked to a girl, he thought. Well, she talked to me. And I didn't faint. She manipulated gravity, Kurama noted. Like the Rinnegan. Watch out for her. She might be dangerous. She was nice, Kurama, Izuku whispered, adjusting his backpack. She was nice. He looked at the gate. He clenched his fist. The doodle of the spiral on his palm was faded, but he knew it was there. All right, Izuku whispered. Let's do this. Databale. He walked into the UA entrance exam, carrying a legacy of fists and a storm in his gut. The 7th was here. The hair tasted like hair. That was the profound, earth-shattering realization that Izuku Midoriya came to as he stood outside the towering glass gates of UA High. It was dry, spindly, and had a lingering aftertaste of American cologne and ozone. It was currently sitting in his stomach like a lead weight, refusing to digest. Gross, Izuku muttered, rubbing his throat. Heroism tastes awful. You ate the DNA of a skeleton man. Kurama's voice rumbled in the back of his mind, sounding equally disgusted but mostly bored. What did you expect? Ambrosia? Ramen? You should have just bitten him. A little nip on the finger. Much more efficient. We are not biting the symbol of peace, Kurama. Izuku thought back, adjusting the straps of his yellow backpack. Besides, he said, I have to digest it. It takes time for the power to merge, and merge it was. Izuku could feel a strange turbulence in his gut. It wasn't nausea, exactly. It was more like two storm fronts colliding. On one side, there was his chakra, the blue, spiritual energy he had spent 10 grueling months cultivating. It was a flowing river, rhythmic and familiar, tempered by the ancient, burning red malice of the Nine Tails. On the other side was one for all. It felt heavy. Dense. Like a ball of solid lead that buzzed with static electricity. It was a stockpile of raw power, unrefined and massive, sitting right next to his chakra coils. The two energies weren't mixing yet. They were circling each other, like two predators in a cage, sniffing for weakness. It's a stockpiling power, Kurama observed, his interest piqued for the first time in hours. It feels crowded. There are echoes in that power. Voices. Ghosts. Ghosts? Izuku paused, his hand on the gate. Ignore them. Focus on the test. If you failed the written exam because you're listening to the voices in your stomach, I will never let you live it down. Izuku took a deep breath. He slapped his cheeks with both hands. Right. Focus. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'm the reincarnation of the 7th Hokage. I cleaned a beach. I can take a test. He stepped through the gates. The campus was massive, a sprawling metropolis of education. Other students were walking around him, a sea of black uniforms and nervous energy. He saw people muttering to themselves, practicing quirk activations, or reading last-minute study guides. Izuku didn't need a study guide. He had a secret weapon, the shadow clone training method, mental variant. He couldn't make physical clones yet. His chakra reserves were still too small to sustain a solid clone for more than a few seconds without exhausting himself, but he could simulate the mindset. He could split his focus. One part of his brain analyzed the environment, one part recited history facts, and one part argued with the giant fox. He walked into the main building, the cool air conditioning hitting his sweat-drenched skin. Midoriya! Izuku turned. Bakugo was walking past him, hands shoved deep in his pockets, his posture screaming murder. Get out of my way, Deku. Unless you want to be turned into a stain on the carpet. Morning, Kaken, Izuku chirped, refusing to be rattled. Good luck today. Bakugo stopped. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. For months, Izuku had been a ghost, vanishing into training. Now, standing here, he looked solid. The nervousness was still there in the twitch of his fingers, but his eyes were steady. Don't need luck, Bakugo scoffed, but the usual venom was dialed back about 10%. Just don't die in the practical. It'd be a waste of paperwork. He stormed off. He likes you, Kurama said. He really doesn't, Izuku sighed. The written exam. The exam hall was a massive auditorium filled with rows of desks. The silence was deafening, broken only by the scratching of pencils and the occasional nervous cough. Izuku sat in row 4, seat 12. He stared at the paper in front of him. Question 1. The rise of quirks led to the collapse of traditional governments during the 22nd century. Discuss the impact of the Meta-Liberation Army on modern hero legislation. Izuku smiled. This was easy. He loved history. He picked up his pencil and began to write, his hand moving in a blur. However, his internal tenant was less enthused. Boring, Kurama groaned. Who cares about legislation? The answer is always hit it until it stops moving. That's how we solved problems in my day. That's why your era was called the Warring States period, Kurama, Izuku thought, circling Destro. We have laws now. Laws are for people who can't throw mountains. Question 5. Mathematics. Calculate the trajectory of a projectile launched at a 45-degree angle with a velocity of... Izuku's pencil stopped. He stared at the numbers. Oh no, Kurama whispered. Math. My ancient enemy. It's just physics, Kurama. You calculated tailed beast bomb trajectories all the time. That was instinct. This is squiggly lines. Why do they use letters in math? Letters are for words. X is a letter. It doesn't belong here. Quiet. You're distracting me. Izuku forced himself to focus, shutting out the fox's complaints. He engaged his analytical brain. He didn't just see the numbers, he saw the arc. He saw a kunai flying through the air. He visualized the wind resistance, wind style, drag coefficient, verify with gravity. He solved it. Question 12, English. Translate the following sentence. A hero is one who shares his meat. Luffy? Kurama guessed. No, it's a proverb about generosity. I think. The hours ticked by. Izuku breezed through the hero history and quirk theory sections. The months of muttering and notebook filling were paying off. He wasn't just a fanboy. He was a scholar of heroism. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the written portion, Izuku put his pencil down. He felt good. His hand was cramped, but his mind was clear. Finally, Kurama stretched in the mindscape, causing a ripple of chakra that made Izuku's stomach gurgle loudly. Now the real test. The violence, the orientation. The auditorium for the practical exam explanation was dark, lit only by a massive screen on the stage. Everybody say hey. Present Mike, the voice hero, stood at the podium, his voice amplified to ear-shattering levels. Silence. Tough crowd. Mike shrugged. All right, listeners. Here's the deal. You're gonna be thrown into a 10-minute mock battle in a super-urban setting. Can you dig it? Izuku sat on the edge of his seat, muttering. Present Mike. His quirk is voice. He can project sound loud enough to shatter eardrums, but he usually modulates it for public speaking. I wonder if he uses directional speakers or if it's purely lung capacity. Shut up, Deku, Bakugo hissed from 2 seats over. Right. Sorry. Present Mike continued, explaining the point system. 3 types of robots. 1-pointer, easy, 2-pointer, medium, 3-pointer, hard. Your goal is to rack up points by immobilizing or destroying these faux villains. Heroism is about action. Suddenly, a hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. Sir, I have a question. A tall boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up. The spotlight hit him, gleaming off his spectacles. The printout says there are 4 types of villains. If this is a misprint, it is a shameful error for a prestigious school like UA. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. He then spun around and pointed a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you, with the curly hair. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here on a field trip, you should leave immediately. The entire auditorium turned to look at Izuku. Izuku felt the heat rise in his cheeks. The old Izuku, the timid, quirkless boy, would have shrunk into his seat and apologized profusely. He would have stammered, but the hair in his stomach gave a heavy thump. And the fox in his gut growled. He's challenging you, Kurama said. Assert dominance. Bite him. No biting. Izuku stood up. He didn't shrink. He looked the tall boy in the eye. I apologize if I was loud, Izuku said, his voice steady, carrying a hint of steel that surprised even him. I was analyzing the pro hero's vocal range to better understand the briefing. Strategy starts before the battle, doesn't it? The boy with glasses blinked, taken aback. Well, strategy is important but... And as for the 4th robot, Izuku turned to the stage, addressing Present Mike directly. Is it an obstacle? Like a trap? Present Mike grinned. Bingo! You catch on quick, listener. The 4th robot is a 0-pointer. It's just a hurdle. Think of it like a thwomp in Mario. There's no point in fighting it, so if you see it, run away, the auditorium murmured. A robot you can't fight? Thank you, sir. The glasses boy bowed, a perfect 90-degree angle, and sat down. I apologize for my outburst. Izuku sat down too. His heart was racing, but he felt a strange calm. I didn't stutter, he realized. You're learning, Kurama grunted. Now let's go break some toys. Battle Center B. The bus ride to the battle center was tense. Izuku sat near the back, squeezing his knees. He was wearing his green tracksuit, the one his mother had bought him. It was simple, durable, and comfortable. Around his forehead, he had tied a green headband. It wasn't a Hittite, but it felt right. He stood before the massive gates of Battle Center B. It was a city. A literal city. Tall buildings, paved roads, streetlights. Yui had money to burn. Izuku looked around. He saw the girl from earlier, Uraraka. She was standing near the entrance, taking deep breaths and looking like she might throw up. I should wish her luck, Izuku thought. It's the polite thing to do. He took a step toward her. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Where are you going? It was the glasses boy, Ida. She looks like she's trying to focus, Ida said sternly. Are you going to distract her with your muttering again? Or are you planning to sabotage her? Izuku looked at Ida's hand, then up at his face. I was going to say good luck, Izuku said quietly. We're all rivals, but we're all trying to be heroes, right? A little kindness doesn't cost points. Ida froze, his hand dropping. I see. Perhaps I misjudged your intent. And... Start. Present mixed voice boomed from the tower speakers. The other examinees jumped, looking confused. There was no countdown, but Izuku didn't hesitate. The moment the word start left mixed lips, Izuku was gone. He channeled chakra to his feet, body flicker, burst. He didn't have the speed of a Jonin yet, but compared to unenhanced teenagers, he was a blur. He kicked off the pavement, leaving a small crater, and shot through the open gates before anyone else had taken a step. What are you waiting for? Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. The urban jungle. The city was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the grinding of gears began. Izuku sprinted down the main avenue. His senses were wide open. He wasn't using his eyes. He was using the feel of the air. 2 signatures to the left. Mechanical. Cold. Izuku drifted left, skidding around a corner. 2 one-point robots, fast wheeled units, were patrolling the alley. Their red eyes locked onto him. Target acquired, they droned. They rushed him, speeding forward on treads. Izuku didn't panic. He analyzed. Speed high. Armor light. Weak point, the neck joint and the optical sensors. He didn't use one for all. He couldn't. He didn't know how to regulate it yet. If he punched one robot and broke his arm, the exam was over. Taijutsu it is. Izuku reached into his utility belt and pulled out a small, metal rod, a piece of rebar he had salvaged from the beach, Konoha style. Izuku whispered, grinning. The first robot lunged. Izuku slid underneath its chassis, using his momentum to carry him past. As he slid, he jammed the rebar into the tread mechanism. Crunch! The robot jerked, its track snapping. It spun out of control and crashed into the wall. The second robot fired a rubber bullet. Izuku sensed it, the displacement of air. He tilted his head, the bullet whizzing past his ear. He channeled chakra into his legs. While walking, he ran 3 steps up the wall of the adjacent building, flipped backward over the robot's head, and landed on its metallic shoulders. Shutdown sequence, Izuku muttered. He grabbed the robot's head with both hands. He channeled a burst of wind-natured chakra into his palms. It wasn't a jutsu, just raw disruption. Wind release, palm gale. He wrenched the head to the side. The servos whined and snapped. Wires sparked. The robot collapsed. 2 points, Kurama tallied. Sloppy. You used too much movement on the flip. Could have just kicked its head off. I'm working on it. Izuku jumped off the scrap heap and kept running. As the other students flooded the city, chaos erupted. Explosions, lasers, and shouting filled the air. Izuku moved like a ghost through the battlefield. He didn't have a flashy quirk. He didn't have lasers coming out of his navel. He had agility. He saw a 3-pointer, a massive, hulking machine with missiles, cornering a student. Izuku didn't engage it head-on. He used the environment. He ran up a fire escape, leaping from the railing to a lamppost, and then onto the robot's back. He found the exposed wiring panel. He ripped it open with chakra-reinforced fingers and yanked the blue wire. The robot powered down instantly. Thanks! The student yelled. Keep moving! Izuku shouted back, already sprinting to the next target. 28 points. 35 points. 42 points. He was racking up a score. But he was getting tired. Using chakra for physical enhancement was draining. His coils were aching. The sweat pouring down his face was stinging his eyes. I need to pace myself, Izuku thought, breathing heavily as he took cover behind a vending machine. I have about half my chakra left. If I run out, I'm just a guy with a stick. You have plenty of chakra, Kurama scoffed. You're just afraid to tap into my reserves because you think you'll grow a tail and eat someone. That is a valid concern, coward. Suddenly, the ground shook. It wasn't an explosion. It was a tremor. Thump, thump, thump. The buildings rattled. Glass shattered in windows. Dust billowed from the end of the main street. The other students stopped fighting. What is that? Someone whispered. From the dust cloud, a shadow emerged. It was colossal. It towered over the skyscrapers. A robot the size of a kaiju. Its green paint was chipped and scarred. Its multiple eyes glowed with a terrifying red light. The zero-pointer. It moved a massive hand, smashing through a building like it was made of cardboard. Debris rained down. Run! Someone screamed. It's huge! There's no way to fight that. The students turned and fled. It was a stampede. Panic took over. The logic of the exam, survival, kicked in. Izuku stood frozen. He looked at the monster. Run, his brain said. Mike said it's an obstacle. It's worth 0 points. There is no strategic value in engaging. He turned to run. Oh wow, a small voice. Izuku stopped. His ear twitched. He looked back. In the middle of the street, right in the path of the zero-pointer, was Uraraka. She was trapped under a pile of rubble. Her leg was pinned. She was struggling, her face pale with pain. The robot was looming over her. Its massive treads were grinding the pavement, churning closer. The other students were running away. They didn't see her. Or they were too scared to look. Izuku looked at the running students. He looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. Strategic value 0. Moral value, infinite. Go, Kurama roared. Show them the will of fire. Izuku didn't think. The hair in his stomach dissolved. The knot of one for all unraveled. Izuku ran. But not away. He ran toward the monster. Hey! Ida shouted from the safety of an alley. Midoriya! What are you doing? It's suicide. Izuku didn't hear him. The world narrowed down to a single point. Save her. He reached Uraraka. He grabbed the slab of concrete pinning her leg. It was heavy. Too heavy for normal strength. Chakra reinforcement. Blue energy flared around his arms. He heaved. The rock moved, but not enough. The robot was 50 feet away. 40. Not enough time. I can't lift it and carry her out in time. He looked up at the robot. I have to stop it. Izuku let go of the rock. He looked at his legs. One for all. He reached for the stockpile. It was like grabbing a live wire. Power surged through him. It was violent. It was red and gold lightning crackling under his skin. If I use 100%, my legs will explode, Izuku realized with sudden clarity. I need a buffer. Use my chakra! Kurama commanded. Coat the bones. Wrap the muscles. Don't let the power tear you apart. Create a vessel. Izuku visualized it. He pulled the blue chakra from his core and wrapped it tightly around his leg bones, forming an internal exoskeleton. Then, he poured one for all into the muscle. One for all, full cowl, and perfect. Chakra armor. Smash! Izuku kicked the ground. Boom! The pavement didn't just crack, it vaporized. A crater 10 feet wide appeared where Izuku had been standing. He shot into the air like a missile. The wind tore at his face. He ascended past the first floor, the second, the 10th. He was flying. He reached the face of the zero-pointer. He was face to face with the machine. It looked at him, its sensors whirring. Izuku clenched his right fist. He felt the power of All Might, the power of generations, flooding his arm. It was agonizing. His veins bulged. The skin turned purple. The egg in the microwave, Izuku thought. Don't let it explode. Ventilate the heat. He channeled wind chakra into the arm. He swirled it around the one for all energy, creating a vortex. A drill of wind and power. Clench your buttocks. Izuku screamed, tears streaming from his eyes from the sheer intensity. And yell from the depths of your heart. He pulled his arm back. Detroit. The robot lunged. Smash! Izuku punched. The impact was silent for a microsecond. Then, the sound caught up. Crack boom. The air pressure alone caved in the robot's face. The metal crumpled like tin foil. The shockwave punched a hole straight through the machine's head and continued upward, parting the clouds above the city. A massive tornado of wind spiraled out from his fist, shredding the robot's upper torso. The machine groaned, tilted backward, and began to fall, exploding internally. Izuku hovered in the air for a second, suspended in the eye of the storm he had created. His right arm was purple. Broken. But not shattered. The chakra reinforcement had saved it from total liquidation, but it was definitely out of commission. Not bad, Kurama acknowledged. A bit flashy. But effective. Then, gravity remembered Izuku Midoriya existed. He started to fall. Oh crap, Izuku realized. I didn't think about the landing. The ground was rushing up fast. He was hundreds of feet in the air. My legs are broken too. No, just strained. But if I land on them from this height, they'll be powder. He looked down. Uraraka was free, floating herself with her quirk, watching him fall with wide eyes. She slapped herself, trying to float him, but she was too far away. I have one arm left. Left arm. Izuku gritted his teeth. The pain in his right arm was blinding, but adrenaline was keeping him conscious. Think, Izuku. How does a ninja land? Wind style. He couldn't do a Rasengan. He couldn't do a substitution. He aimed his left hand at the ground. He gathered every last drop of chakra he had left. Every scrap of spiritual energy. Wind style. Gale palm. He released a burst of compressed wind directly downward. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it acted like a retro rocket. It slowed his descent. Whoosh. He slammed into the ground, but he rolled. He used the roll to disperse the momentum. He tumbled, bouncing like a rag doll, and skidded to a halt in the dust. Silence descended on the battle center. The zero-pointer lay in ruins, smoke pouring from its neck. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the sky. His right arm was a mess. His legs were trembling uncontrollably. His chakra was drained, but he was alive. That? Izuku wheezed, a small smile touching his lips. Tasted like victory. The other students slowly emerged from hiding. They stared at the broken robot. They stared at the broken boy. Did you see that? He took it out in one punch. I thought he was quirkless. He jumped over a building. Ida walked forward, his mouth agape. He looked at Izuku, then at the robot. He sacrificed everything to save her. He knew there were no points, and he did it anyway. Uraraka ran over, stumbling. She knelt beside him. You saved me. Are you okay? Your arm. I'm fine. Izuku whispered before his eyes rolled back in his head. Just napping. Sleep, Kit, Kurama said softly. You earned it. The observation room. In a dark room lined with monitors, the teachers of UA High sat in silence. Well, Midnight broke the silence, licking her lips. That was intense. Cementos nodded. He has raw power comparable to All Might. But the way he moved before that, it wasn't a quirk. It was martial arts. Pure skill. And that energy signature, ectoplasm, pointed at the screen, where a thermal readout showed Izuku's body. When he punched, it wasn't just physical force. There was a secondary energy. Wind pressure, but concentrated. In the corner, a small mouse bear dog creature sat sipping tea. Principal Nizu. Fascinating, Nizu chuckled. He has 0 villain points. A statistical failure. He pressed a button, rewinding the footage to the moment Izuku turned back to face the robot. But this exam is not just about combat, Nizu said, his eyes gleaming. It is about the spirit of a hero. The willingness to risk oneself for others. He looked at the other judges. Rescue points. How many? 60. All Might's voice rang out. The symbol of peace was standing in the shadows, clutching his side. He was smiling so hard it hurt. He jumped without hesitation, All Might said proudly. He demonstrated the core essence of a hero, meddling when you don't need to. 60 points, Nizu agreed. Plus the combat points he likely accrued before the big finish. He passes comfortably. Nizu looked at the screen, zooming in on Izuku's unconscious face. Izuku Midoriya. A boy with a mysterious power, a warrior's instinct, and a heart of gold. I think, Nizu sipped his tea, this year is going to be very interesting. 1 week later, Izuku sat at his desk in his room. His arm was in a sling. Recovery Girl had healed the worst of it, but she had scolded him for an hour about reckless self-destruction and bone powder. He stared at the envelope on his desk. It was heavy. It had the Yui wax seal. "It's here," Izuku whispered. Inko was pacing outside the door, mumbling frantically. "Open it," Kurama commanded. "If you failed, I'm taking over and we're becoming a rogue ninja. I've always wanted to be a missing nin. We are not becoming terrorists, Kurama." Izuku tore open the envelope. A metal disc fell out. A hologram projected onto the wall. "I am here!" All Might appeared, filling the screen with his massive presence. As a projection, All Might? Izuku gasped. "Young Midoriya! You have been waiting. And the results are in. You passed the written exam with flying colors. But the practical, 0 villain points. A disaster." Izuku's heart sank. He knew it. He had wasted too much time on the small robots, and then destroyed the one that didn't count. Or so it would seem. All Might leaned into the camera. "But a hero academy that rejects those who save others is no academy at all. Observe." A video played. It was Uraraka. She was in the negotiation room, asking to give her points to Izuku. "He saved me," she pleaded. "Please." "He'll have 0 points if you don't." Izuku teared up. "Uraraka-san, she tried to negotiate for you." "But there was no need," the screen flashed. "Rescue points, 60. 60 rescue points. And with your 45 villain points from the early game, you have 105 points. First place." Izuku froze. "First place?" He beat Bakugo. "Come, young Midoriya." All Might extended a hand. "This is your hero academia." The hologram faded. Izuku sat there in silence. He looked at his hand, the hand that had smashed a giant robot. The hand that held the spiral. He clenched it into a fist. "I did it," he whispered. "We did it," Kurama corrected. "But the hard part starts now. You broke your arm punching a toy. If you fight a real villain, you'll be paced. Training resumes tomorrow. Double gravity. You're a slave driver, Kurama. I'm a sensei. Now go tell your mother before she vibrates through the floor." Izuku opened the door. Inko looked at him, terrified. Izuku smiled. The wide, foxy grin of the Uzumaki lineage. "I got in, Mom!" Inko screamed and fainted. Izuku caught her. "Yep," he laughed. "I'm gonna be a hero." Outside, the wind picked up, swirling leaves in a spiral pattern, dancing toward the future. The 7th had arrived at UA. And the world wasn't ready.